Combined no hitter. Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. I'm Peter Apple. That's Aram Layton. It is Thursday. We're doing a recap of Game 4, a preview of Game 5, just like we do every morning. Got to shout out our guy Aram. He's currently in California. It is 10 a.m. in the morning, so that means it's 7 a.m. for him, bright and early. So he's definitely going to be tired. And me emotionally, I'm pretty tired after betting on the Phillies and then watching them get no hit. What a day. How are you, my friend?
I forgot that you had the Phillies, and
Yeah.
it just makes it a little bit more painful, I'd imagine. But I think if you're going to see something, though, if you're going to lose, at least have it be in a historic way. We talked about this. I think you had one other loss. You were up 40 units this year, so it doesn't freaking matter. But like you had one other loss that I think was a no-hitter too.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
My worst bet of the season is when I had Rays money line. Or no. Yeah, I had Rays money line and Reed Detmers took the mound.
Yeah.
And Reed Detmers threw a no-hitter and the Angels won 12-0. I mean, that's probably the worst pick ever, but this felt a little bit more historic considering that the last no-hitter or perfect game was delivered by Don Larson in 1956. And this is what the Astros did. It wasn't a no-hitter. It wasn't Cristian Javier going all 9 innings. He was relieved by an incredible bullpen. And I just want to shout out Brian Abreu for a second. I was with Colby, and I was like, that guy could also start. They just have a slew of bullpen arms that you look at all of them and you think to yourself, these guys could either all be closers or all make a transition into the rotation like Cristian Javier did.
It's unbelievable. And I mean, it all kind of boils back down to that stat that we talked about how 99 point whatever percent of the innings that were pitched by Astros pitchers this year were sub-4 ERA guys. Like that always kind of pops back up in my mind every time they go to somebody. And I'm like, well, this guy's going to be nasty. Every single guy they go to is a good option. And that's what makes it even crazier. And I mean, they go Abreu, Montero, Presley, done. I mean, and of course, it's Cristian Javier who sets the tone there, and we'll talk about him a little bit in a moment. But the other thing, too, is like the Phillies lose, and they fired a lot of their good bullets here. I mean, they did save Sir Anthony Dominguez, and I'm sure we're going to see him for multiple innings in this next game, assuming that it's close. But, Alvarado showed his first little vulnerabilities, and then they still used Robertson. They used Eflin, who looked great. But I mean, they used all of their guys. So the Astros, it worked right into their favor. And just like that, it's amazing how quick a series can go. The pendulum can kind of swing. It felt like the Phillies had all the momentum. Now, all of a sudden, it feels like the Astros have all the momentum again. And it's amazing how that can just change in one game in these kinds of series.
And you would assume that the Astros would have bounced back after getting kind of punched in the mouth in Game 3, losing 7-0. You would assume that they would come back. But at the same time, you assume that Aaron Nola would make the adjustment.
Yeah.
So when I was, I put out my bet and my articles every morning, like you guys know, this is how it kind of fit into my head. What's a more likely scenario? That Aaron Nola at home makes an adjustment after a tough loss, even though when he pitched poorly in that game, the Phillies offense was so explosive that they ended up coming back and winning that game, even against Houston's bullpen.
Yeah.
Or Cristian Javier, 25 years old, first full year in the rotation, comes into Citizens Bank Park, where the Phillies are averaging 7 runs a game, and turns in an excellent start in his first start in the World Series. I thought to myself, what's more likely? I thought the Phillies side was more likely.
I mean, it's fair rationale.
But guess what happened? Cristian Javier dominated. And not only did he dominated with a specific pitch mix that the Phillies have been so good against. Fastballs and sliders. They have a lot of hitters in their lineup who actually match up very well against those pitches. Cristian Javier doesn't throw 97, 98 miles an hour. Cristian Javier throws between 93 to 95 with this 80-mile-an-hour breaking ball. And what did he do? He shoved it down the Phillies' throats. And where it really unraveled was because Aaron Nola didn't pitch poorly. The box score, where it's looking like 4 innings, 7 hits, 3 earned runs. That's not as bad as he pitched because Jose Alvarado came in. Yordan Alvarez immediately gets hit with 99. Alex Bregman gets the double, and then it just unravels from there. So Aaron Nola did look like he made the adjustment. He didn't look great, but he didn't look bad either.
No, he didn't. But at the same time, like you want more, right? Like I agree.
Yeah.
It wasn't Nola's. This wasn't an implosion. He didn't look bad. And in the beginning, he looked really sharp. And then it just kind of seemed like he's slow. The Astros started to slowly adjust. And all of a sudden, they kind of figured him out a little bit. In the beginning, that first inning, and even going into the second, he had a little bit of traffic, but you're like looking at the curveball, you're seeing the way he's locating. You're like, oh, this is going to be a pitcher's duel. And then as they start to get to Nola, you think, okay, maybe the same is going to happen to Javier. And I love all the points that you make here, Peter. I mean, this was a quote unquote, like not ideal matchup for Cristian Javier, right? Young guy, World Series. You listed all the things. And the fact that the Phillies actually hit fastball slider pretty well. That's kind of a testament to just how ridiculously nasty he was. Like there's guys that when you're locked into that degree, it doesn't matter, what the numbers are against, whatever you do. And Javier, I was looking at the fastball specifically, and I think they ended up touching on that, which I'm glad they did on the broadcast. But what makes his fastball so tough is that riding action, that induced vertical break. And I think average is around 16 to 17 inches of induced vertical break. The more inches of induced vertical break, even though it's counterintuitive, that the more that riding action it has. So if you get over 20, that's elite. He was spinning like 21s. And just for reference, that for a hitter's mind, if they're used to 17 inches of induced vertical break, in their mind, when they see the ball start at a certain height, they're getting their bat down about a few inches below that because that's where you're naturally going to compute where it's going to be. Cristian Javier's fastball was defying what our brains are used to, what those hitters' brains are used to seeing, of just gravity pulling it down. It was defying gravity in a lot of ways. And you could just see the hitters not even able to adjust to it. It was like almost like a mind trick, right? Like a visual trick that he's able to pull off with that fastball because you think it's going to end up here, but it stays up here. And that's why he could throw it 70% of the time. He did the same thing against the Yankees in the playoffs too. How do you throw a fastball that often and have that kind of success? It's the shape, deception, and it's just something that I don't know how guys are going to figure it out.
And not only did we see it in the numbers to that point that you were making, which is when you dial it down to 21 inches of vertical break, what does that look like? I think we saw this in real time. Remember in the first at bat, Kyle Schwarber gets a middle fastball, and it looks like he is blown out of the water. And then Cristian Javier goes up against him, and he's just blown away. And it's not 99. It's not 100 miles an hour. It's 94, 95. And then we saw how hard is it to get a fastball by Bryce Harper? Pretty hard. But he was getting him by it like nobody's business. And then it's like you could either sit on the fastball or sit on the slider, and it's not that fast of a velocity where you can't adjust, but these guys simply couldn't adjust. So that 95 with 21 inches of induced vertical break probably seems like 101 at this point.
It does, and it seems like magical. It seems like a wiffle ball the way it goes up. And you bring up the point about the slider, like you got to sell out for the fastball, and he'll mix in the slider, 25 times, right? And you're going to look like an idiot. So it's just amazing how he's able to do that. And then the thing with the way the Astros bullpen is, it's not going to get that much easier. And Brian Abreu's inning was one of the nastiest innings I think we've seen in a long time. And that's the other annoying thing about the Astros is they pass the baton and you're in trouble. That's why you got to kind of get to the starter. And the more I was thinking about it, I was like, the way to beat the Astros for the most part is you got to get to the starter because otherwise you're just going to struggle to get to one of these guys in a 1-inning burst. And all the starters are good. All the starters are really, really, really good. So it makes it very, very difficult for the Phillies. But man, I just want to acknowledge no-hitter in the World Series. I know it wasn't, a single no-hitter like Don Larson, who didn't even know he was throwing it when he did. If you watch the video, he literally is walking off and he even said that he didn't know he was throwing because he was so locked in. Javier looked ridiculously locked in. It was crazy. You see, between innings, just staring forward into oblivion. I was like, I would not go near that guy. And it's just one of those things where if the starter is that good, it's not like the bullpen's much of a relief for these Phillies hitters either. And I mean, we just saw it firsthand.
I mean, how is this not one of the most impressive performances in postseason history, right? Not only because of the no-hitter through 6 innings. That's one thing. But you're 25 years old. You're making your first career World Series start against a Phillies offense that is averaging 7 runs per game, not just in the World Series at home. over the entirety of the playoffs at home. This is an electric offense with the entire crowd behind you, who just got a ton of momentum from a 7-0 win the night before. They had to have all the confidence moving in, and they couldn't touch two-pitch Cristian Javier. Now, he can mix in a curveball, but he doesn't mix it in as, what did he throw, two?
He threw two knuckle curves.
Two knuckle curves.
And the funniest part, dude, is I'm watching with my buddies, and they're like, damn, like, what's the deal with this guy? And I'm like, dude, he only has two pitches, fastball, slider. The next pitch was one of the two knuckle curves. And they're like, that wasn't a slider. And I'm like, well, yeah, never mind. Never mind.
And so we talked about Cristian Javier and how good that this Astros bullpen is behind him. We talked a little bit about the implosion of Aaron Nola. But I was very impressed with what Alex Bregman did, that double down the line. I just want to shout out him for a second, because he's seeing 96 mile an hour sliders from Jose Alvarado. He's seen 101. Alvarado looked like that was some of the highest velocity that I've seen from him. And Alex Bregman just chokes up, does what he can, gets the barrel on the ball, and drives in the run. And that kind of felt like the hammer. I was at Wogie's on the west side. It's a Philadelphia Phillies bar.
Yeah.
And
of course you go there when I'm out of town. That's close to my place.
The helium went out of the room. But at the same time, I want to shout out Phillies fans for a second, because I was at that bar and there was not 1 second in that game where they thought they were out of it.
Yeah,
they thought they were out of it. And the Phillies live line to win the game when they were down 5-0 was plus 1,600. And I was like talking with some people at the Phillies bar, and they're like, yeah, I'm already on that. Like, it was, they had full confidence they were coming back, but that's how electric the Phillies fan base is. Like, I love that. If I was at a Yankee bar and we were down 5-0, it would be
we're the worst.
Would have gone home.
Yeah.
Everyone would have gone home. No one left that bar. Everyone was confident that the Phillies could have still won that game. And to be honest with you, would we have been shocked if the Phillies came back?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, that's why I didn't want to stop watching for a second, because ultimately the Phillies have done this all postseason. And that's the only thing, though, is right. You can't live that way. You can't always be able to just keep coming back that way. But the reality is, I mean, this is just one of those games where you got to tip your cap. I don't think any team on earth was hitting Cristian Javier yesterday the way it was. But no, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Phillies came back. And that's why I don't think, we talk about the momentum shifting. It definitely has. It naturally will. But I don't think it's really impacting the Phillies here. They got one more game at home, and we'll get to that in a second and how important it is. But I do want to shout out a couple other guys too. Yuli Gurriel, 2 for 4 yesterday. Again. He has not struck out now, in 48 postseason plate appearances? It's something like that. It's 46 or 48. Sarah Langs pointed that out on Twitter too. He's not struck out once in the postseason. And then Jeremy Pena, talk about a youngster, right? He's 25, just turned 25, rookie. We've talked about him a lot on the podcast, but what stands out to me about Pena in this game was he strikes out the first 2 times, if I'm not mistaken. He ends up picking up 2 more hits in his next 3 at-bats and was one of 2 guys. It was him and Yuli Gurriel who had 2 hits yesterday. Jeremy Pena just seems like he's built for this, man. He just seems like he was so ready to take over whatever Carlos Correa left, whatever spot Carlos Correa left, not intimidated by that whatsoever. And you can see that on the big stage. And then that Bregman swing was one of the best swings I've seen all postseason. Like you mentioned on Alvarado, nasty stuff. To go the other way on that pitch that spot, absolutely incredible piece of hitting. He has been just ridiculously good. But yeah, I mean, the Phillies hitters, it was the first time that we saw them not look that confident up there. And we talk about 1, 2, 3 hat tricks. Real Muto, Castellanos, Alec Boehm, all hat tricked. You had 2 strikeouts from Bryce Harper as well. Just not something we're really used to. And I'm very interested to see how they bounce back from that tomorrow. But it's easy to say, I think Aaron Nola, there's going to be postseason questions now up until the next time he goes into the postseason. I know he had some good spots here and there, but last few starts have not looked great. It happens. He's facing the Astros, but that's going to be the conversation until he gets back in the postseason again next year. And hopefully he can right that ship a little bit, because there's nothing worse than being a great pitcher who everyone always says, oh yeah, but postseason. You don't want to be that guy. And Nola still has a chance to right that ship, but right now he looks like that guy.
And just to finish on your last point about Bregman, I was thinking, I was sitting there and I was talking with Colby. I was like, I think that's the best piece of hitting I've seen in the playoffs so far. And it was for a
Yeah.
couple of reasons, not only because it was 101 on the outside corner from a lefty with when it's tailing away from you, but it was the situation, right? He had just faced Aaron Nola, who, he had a velo uptick. He was up to 95, 96 miles an hour, but he has a lot of different pitches, right? That's what makes Aaron Nola so good, is that he can locate 5 different pitches and he doesn't walk anyone and he's nasty. But then you get a completely different look. And Jose Alvarado hit Yordan Alvarez with 99 miles an hour on his first pitch, and then Alex Bregman just stands up there. And he's coming in with 101 and 96-mile-an-hour sliders, and he just chokes up. You could tell Alex Bregman has been here, done that before, and he could have been throwing 110 miles an hour, and it wouldn't have deterred Alex Bregman.
His heart rate was just the same. You could tell.
And if we're talking about Aaron Nola and his struggles in the postseason so far, let's get into Game 5 and talk about Justin Verlander's struggles in the postseason so far. We've talked about this tweet before from Christopher Scott, and I just couldn't believe it, and I want to talk about it again in case we have any new listeners to the Just Baseball show. If Madison Bumgarner came in and pitched in the World Series in Game 5 instead of Justin Verlander and allowed 23 home runs in a row without recording an out, he would still have a lower ERA than Justin Verlander. I cannot believe that's real. The more I say it, the more I almost don't believe it.
It's insane. And what's funny is with Dusty Baker as manager, he would probably let Mad Bum do that. He'd probably leave him in for 23 homers. I mean, I know you guys talked about it with McCullers. That was still one of the craziest things I've ever seen, just being left in that long during something like that. But no, that stat is absolutely unbelievable for a couple reasons. It illustrates how frustrating Verlander has been in the World Series, but also how incredible Mad Bum has been in the World Series through his career. I mean, he's one of the best, if arguably the best World Series pitcher ever. There's just examples of guys like that really just rise to the occasion. But this is a really big spot, man. And I'm really interested to see what Verlander's made of from this perspective, because I feel like Verlander's answered every single question he needs to answer in his career. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to win the Cy Young after his second Tommy John surgery. We've talked about it all. Like, this guy has done everything he needs to do on a baseball field. But this is the one thing, right? This is the one thing. And it feels kind of Kershaw-esque the way we're talking about it. It's just the narrative wasn't there as much because Verlander wasn't as consistently in the playoffs. And also he was fine in the playoffs. It was more specifically in the World Series. But I mean, this is a defining spot. And what's interesting is this should be a lopsided game, right? Like, this should be, in terms of Vegas, right? I haven't looked at the line. Yeah. It should, I know it's not, but it should be like minus 205 in favor of the Astros because it's Justin Verlander versus Noah Syndergaard. It shouldn't be close. But the reality is, I don't know what the line is. I'm sure you do. Yeah. I'm sure it's not. And that says a lot because it's Justin freaking Verlander. And he should be the heavy favorite against a guy who's, let's be honest, like, just not that inspiring this year in Noah Syndergaard.
And just to quantify what you were saying about Verlander and how it's not a postseason problem. It's just a World Series problem.
Yeah.
He's got an ERA near 3 in all of his ALDS series, all his ALCS series. And we saw it on full display, right? Against the Mariners, 10 hits, 6 earned runs in 4 innings. But then the next start, he has a 6-inning masterpiece against the Yankees with 11 strikeouts, 3 hits, and 1 earned run. But it's also, was he just left out there too long against the Phillies? Because I remember we were texting, Dustin and I were texting, man, Verlander is on. Yeah. And then it just kind of unraveled. So I have a hard time believing that he doesn't make that same adjustment that he did from his first start in the ALDS to his second start in the ALCS, right? It's Justin Verlander at the end of the day. We can harp on the statistics of him in the World Series, but at the end of the day, it's on a game-by-game basis. Does it matter what Justin Verlander did in 2018 against some other team when he was 3 years younger? And that's why it's like, it's almost comical to make fun of him a little bit. And I think he's earned that because now we have a large enough sample where you think to yourself, hey, it's fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me in 43 innings.
Yeah.
That's something, right?
Yeah.
But I have such a hard time believing that Justin Verlander won't make the adjustment, kind of like Nola did make the adjustment.
No, I know. I'm
like
with you.
He got
I'll
hit
die on
around
that
a little
hill.
bit. You know what
I'll
I'm
die
saying?
on that hill,
Like,
right?
here's where I'm thinking. First of all, the line right now is minus 160 towards the Astros. And while Noah Syndergaard isn't very inspiring, he had a 2.89 ERA against the Astros during the regular season. His first start of the regular season was his best start against the Astros. 5 1/3 innings of shutout baseball. Like, Noah Syndergaard isn't the best pitcher in the world,
but he has flashes.
He's also not asked to go 6 innings. He's asked to go 3 or 4, and then you're handing it over to a Phillies bullpen that, outside of a Jose Alvarado misstep, has been unbelievable. And to your point, Dominguez is now rested. So the over-under is at 7.5. And I feel like people will want to play the over, right? You got Justin Verlander, who has all these stats of the World Series, and then you have Noah Syndergaard, who on paper is like, well, he's about as average as possible. Yeah. But would we be surprised if Verlander goes 6 innings, 1 run, Noah Syndergaard goes 4 innings, 1 run, and then there's a couple runs scored in the bullpen, but maybe even not, and it goes way under the total of 7.5. That's where I'm leaning, and I wanted to come to you with that because, as you know, it's so difficult to bet on the World Series. Dude.
Oh, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. That's what makes the World Series great. I don't want you to be able to tell me what's going to fucking happen. Like, that's the whole point. No, but like I mean, I hear you, because there's a day off tomorrow too, right? We have the travel day tomorrow, and with that, you're going to be able to empty the tank a little bit on the bullpen. Bilotti only threw 9 pitches. Robertson only threw 11. Eflin only threw 12. Those guys will be available, and you got Sir Anthony available. I think with the way that Rob Thompson's been playing it, we could see Sir Anthony as one of the first arms out of the bullpen. If that's viewed as the middle of the lineup, if that's when the middle of the lineup comes up and he wants those 2 innings there. So let's say you get 4 innings out of Syndergaard. Sir Anthony gives you 2. Alvarado's probably the only guy unavailable. He might still technically be available for 22 pitches. He's probably available. I don't know if I
remember with the postponement, with the rain, like he didn't pitch the game before.
Yeah, he could probably
I wouldn't be
go.
surprised. He for example, like his job there was to get out Yordan Alvarez, and he just hit him with his first pitch.
Yeah,
and then you got
Kyle
Tucker, lefty killer. You got Alex Bregman, lefty killer, and you got Yuli Gurriel, who just kills everyone at this point.
Everyone, especially lefties.
Yeah, especially lefties. So it was a tough one. Like, I'm sure they were hoping he could get out Yordan and possibly have 1 out. Maybe that looks a little bit differently. Maybe he pitches Alex Bregman a little bit differently. I wouldn't be surprised, again, to see Jose Alvarado, because outside of that 1 inning, it was hard to find a better left-handed reliever.
No, he's been, since the second half of the season, has been absolutely unbelievable. So I'm with you, man. It's all hands on deck. Syndergaard really only needs to give them 3 or 4. And then when you look at Verlander, that's a hill I'll die on, right? Like, this guy has a chance to really right the ship on this. I mean, you looking into what he just did this year to come back, where a lot of people counted him out. A lot of people weren't sure what he was going to look like, and he comes back and does what he's done. I'm never going to count that guy out. I'm just really interested to see how this thing shakes out for the Phillies offensively too, because you just got no hit. And I know Verlander, we can highlight the struggles, but let's just look at it through this lens. You just got no hit by a rookie, which undersells it because he's been spectacular. But you get no hit by a youngster, basically. And now you have to face a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And that's how you have to bounce back. I mean, Javier's 25 years old, second-year guy. But you got to come back now and face the best guy, maybe the best resume pitcher in baseball at this point. And that's the craziest part, right? Like, you just got no hit, and it's like, oh, great. Okay, now we bounce back and face Justin Verlander. I know they've had success against him, but like you mentioned, like, Verlander can turn it right back. And I promise he spent the last handful of days just figuring out what wasn't going right, where it went wrong, because like you said, he was great through the first couple innings.
Yeah,
and
great.
He looked like prime Justin Verlander, like the guy that had the 180 or whatever ERA this year. 1.75 ERA this year. I'm very, very interested. I don't want to make a prediction on it because, like, I could see it going either way, but I am very interested to see how he bounces back. If the Phillies get to him, man, that kind of sucks, just because, like, I don't want that narrative around Justin Verlander.
I agree.
Like, I just don't want it. I don't want it. Like, everybody, I see it. And I know it's social media, and we've gotten comments on our YouTube of, like, social media is not an indication of the entire baseball fan base. And, like, I'm 100% agree. But there's just so many people out there that are just like, love to see the greats falter in certain ways. And I consider me the opposite. I want to see the greats do great things. And I want to see Verlander do something awesome. I'm not saying I want the Astros to win. I actually would like to see the Phillies pick this one up because it's obviously advantage Astros with the next two, and you'd rather them have their backs against the wall with two at home.
Yeah.
But man, I want to see Verlander do something cool. Like, I just want to see him pitch well.
I
Please.
totally agree with you, especially with the Kershaw when he finally got that monkey off his back in the World Series. And it was always, a similar thing, right? With Justin Verlander, it was the fourth or fifth inning where he unraveled. With Kershaw, it was always the last inning where he unraveled. So I think we could see Dusty Baker having a quick hook, knowing that his bullpen and one inning spurts, these guys are just as good as Justin Verlander is in terms of one inning spurts. I mean, I'd put Brian Abreu, I'd put Rafael Montero, I'd put Ryan Presley up against anybody in the world. Anybody in the world. So let's talk a little bit of hypotheticals for a second. Let's say the Astros win this game as they are favored, right? Then we're going back 3-2 to Houston. How are you feeling about the Phillies' chances? With Wheeler going game 6, then Ranger Suarez going game 7. Wheeler got that extra day of rest, so I'm hoping, because he did have the velo downtick, will it go back up? Will he look like vintage Wheeler? And then if you have vintage Wheeler, he could be playing on the moon. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what offense. If Wheeler's on, Wheeler is on. And then you have Ranger Suarez, who just dominated the Astros. So, but at the same time, you might still be worried about Wheeler a little bit. Just because he had the extra day of rest doesn't mean that he's just going to look like Zach Wheeler. So let's go. If the Astros win game 5, how are you feeling about the Phillies' chances?
Not good. I think instead of saying they're cooked, because if the pitching matchups didn't work out this way, I'd feel horrible. They've got a fighting chance, because you have Wheeler, who, again, I think backs against the wall, extra day of rest. I'm gonna have faith in Wheeler there, and then we saw what Suarez did first time out. Are the Astros going to make an adjustment? Maybe. Is Suarez going to be as perfect? Probably not, but he's still going to give you a really competitive start, I think. And so you got to feel really good with the way the next 2 games look in that regard. But to have to go into Houston and beat them twice with your back against the wall, I wouldn't feel great about it. But I will say the way that the pitching shakes out, they have a shot. And I think that's all you can ask for, even at this point. I mean, we were counting them out. At least most of us were. You had Phillies. But I mean, like, a lot of people were counting them out, from the start. And I know Phillies fans probably don't want to hear it because they felt like they had a really good shot earlier in the series, and it's still tied at this point. But it shows you how big the 5th game can really swing things one way or another, because 3-2 is just such a big difference. I wouldn't feel great about having to win 2 in a row, but their pitching matchup salvages it for them, I think, and gives them a good shot. But I mean, it seems like this game right here is kind of the series definer in a lot of ways, because even back towards the Astros, which would be the other hypothetical, I'd feel good about the Phillies having those 2 guys going, only having to win one of them. I'm curious what you think about that. What if the Phillies win and you go back to Houston? They've got to win 2. It's 3-2 Phillies. Obviously, the Astros always have a chance, but I'd feel pretty good about the Phillies spot there with Wheeler, then Suarez, off a day of rest with your bullpen.
It's funny. So, not to give myself a pat on the back, because it could go horribly wrong if the Astros win this game, and then my prediction at the beginning goes out the window. But I said they would split game 1 and 2, then they would win 2 of 3 in Philadelphia, then they would lose that 6th game. And that 6th game, how good Wheeler has been, how phenomenal. I'm afraid of Framber Valdez. Let's put that, he will pitch game 6. And as good as Wheeler he could look like the best pitcher on planet Earth. Yeah. But at the end of the day, is there a better pitcher right now in the postseason than Framber? But then you move forward, right? McCullers Ranger. I give the Phillies the edge in that one. So this is a absolute must win for both sides, right? I think it's an absolute win for both sides. And when you have Justin Verlander against Noah Syndergaard, you lean towards the Astros side. But at the end of the day, we talked about the narrative when we talked about fool me once, shame on me, whatever that saying is, fool me in 43 innings. There might be an issue here. I don't think either of us would be surprised if the Phillies just jump on him and they go up and they go down to Houston up 3-2 in the series. I don't think we would be surprised. Do we want it to happen? No, because we don't like that narrative. similar to Kershaw. We don't want that to happen to Justin Verlander, but would we be surprised?
I mean, no, because that's what's been happening, right? Like we're watching it. We just watched it firsthand. So that's the crazy thing is like I feel like we're playing both sides, but it's
I
like
know.
that's the crazy part about the World Series is like we're here to just talk about it because I
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you like I have a crystal ball. I have no freaking clue. We're trying to figure out if a Hall of Famer is going to be good in the World Series. Like that's how hard baseball is, that a first ballot Hall of Famer might suck continuously in the World Series. Like it's crazy. But no, I will say like this game feels like the defining one in a lot of ways. Obviously it's not over, but I would say this is, if you go like percentage chance to win the series, there's no way that any other game, everyone talks about how important it is to win game one. Sure. I don't think there's one game more important besides an elimination game than this one. Like this is the game that swings the percentages one way or another. The Phillies do hedge a little bit with the pitching matchups that they have working in their favor. And I ask you, dude, and I know we're going to get to it because we'll probably hopefully get to a game 7, but like, do you even go to McCullers in that game? Like, what do you do?
The one thing that you're looking at McCullers is 3.57 ERA on the road in the regular season, 1.50 ERA at home. So he's obviously much more comfortable pitching at Minute Maid Park, and he's your guy. I mean, you could go to Luis Garcia instead. I mean, you can't go to Verlander. You probably can't go to Cristian Javier on that shorter rest. So you probably have to go with Lance McCullers Jr. I mean, he's your guy, right? You'd expect him again to make the adjustment. He was, there was all these stuff about him possibly tipping pitches. In that 3rd and 4th inning, when it looked like he at least fixed his mistake, he looked fine. He looked perfectly fine. That's why I think they left him out there, because they thought, oh, he must have fixed what was going on, right? He had those early troubles, but then settled in, and then everything came unraveled again in the 5th inning. Maybe he never did truly fix it. But if I'm the Astros, like, I have to go with Lance McCullers Jr. in game 7, right? Unless you want to go with Hunter Brown, Luis Garcia hybrid, which is the crazy thing about the Astros, because like that could work better. Like
that could work better.
That's how good they are.
It really could.
One more thing before we get to just our predictions for game 5. The odds reflected kind of what you were saying, right? So the Astros going into this game were plus 125 to win the World Series. Not just in that game. They were plus 125 down 2-1, right? They go up 5-0 in the middle of the game. Those odds went from plus 125 to minus 200. And now they are currently minus 210 to win the World Series. Tied 2-2. So that goes to show you what they think of this game. And to your point about the Astros being huge favorites, like minus 200, I think on a neutral field they would be in this matchup. But you just have Philadelphia at home, so they can't put a minus 200 on the road. You know what I'm saying? So I think you're on a neutral field, you're right. And they adjust that. And now we're looking at minus 160 towards the Astros. So they agree with you. If the Astros, or if the Phillies lose this game, the books are saying it's basically over.
Yeah. Well, so to put it in perspective there for like those who might not be bettors, right? If you put $10 on the Astros to win the series before the game started yesterday, it would have won you about $12.50, right? If you, at that point, in the game when it was a blowout, or even once the game was over, put $10 now on the Astros to win the series, it would have paid you $4.
5, right? It's half. Yeah, 10 to win $5.
Yeah, like that shows you how much it's swung in terms of momentum and percentages right there. That is a great point. I didn't realize it was that dramatic from the Vegas standpoint.
Dramatic. And what I found was very interesting was the game wasn't over yet.
No.
The game wasn't over yet. So that's how much respect the books have for the Houston bullpen. Because also, Justin Verlander and all of his struggles, Noah Syndergaard just being a, unseasoned chicken in terms of the taste of what we're going to get. Still chicken.
Yeah.
Doesn't have all the salt and pepper on it and the garlic powder and all that kind of stuff. The total is at 7.5. Like, shouldn't it be at 8? It's been 8 before. Shouldn't it be at 8? But no, it's at 7.5, which I find very interesting. And I was on Sports Grid. Thanks to the Sports Grid guys for having me on. I said, yeah, there might be 3 or 4 or 5 runs scored in the first 5 innings. but that's where the scoring might halt, which is exactly what has happened. In these first 4 games, the first 5 total, it has gone over that every single game, but the under is 3-1. That just goes to show how good these bullpens are. So to your point that you made at the beginning, which I thought was the point, is that you have to get to the starting pitchers or else the game appears to be over. But it would be the most World Series thing to see both of these guys through 5-inning shutout and then both bullpens blow it in game 5, because like that's
of course. So yeah, because we're saying this, that's exactly what's going to happen. But no, I mean, that's the other thing I'm thinking about here is like, if you're the Phillies going into this, you want this to be a bullpen game, right? Anything else means you lost, because Syndergaard's not going 7. Like he's not going 6. You know, he's probably not going 5.
Now he is.
Now he is. Yeah. He's probably not going 5. Maybe maximum he's going 5. You're hoping to get Verlander out of there before the 6th, and you're really hoping to get him out of there before the 5th. But that's a tall task, even with his struggles. So you want a bullpen game, and the craziest part about that is like if you don't get your runs in on Verlander and they pull him early, it's going to be really hard. And the question is, can these Phillies match up bullpen wise with the Astros? That was our question going into this. For the most part, they have, but this is going to be like the ultimate test here. Like this is the ultimate test, because I do think we're going to see both bullpens relatively early. I think Verlander is going to give us a good start, but it's going to be a short leash good start, because I think Dusty's kind of seen, look, he looked good. He looked sharp in the early going, then kind of waned. They're not going to let him fully fade this time. I think that they're going to see the writing on the wall. If he starts to, he lets a guy on, they pick up a hit, like, see ya, yank it. Like, don't put him in. You got a rested bullpen for the most part. Why do that? I think that's what we're going to see, a shorter leash with Verlander. And if it goes into a bullpen game, the big test is, can the Phillies match what the Astros are doing, or can they get to Verlander with the big swings, right? Can they get the 2-run shot or the 3-run shot that really puts him over the top? Because I think he's going to have a short leash. I really do, which is crazy to say about him. But I think the way that Dusty has kind of seen this thing unravel and the way things have gone, you can get 5 good innings out of Verlander, but you better pull him at the right time. And I think that was always the struggle with Kershaw. Everyone always highlights, you talk about the one bad inning at the end. Everyone always highlights it, how rough it was for Kershaw. But in a lot of ways, I feel like if he was pulled at the right time, those numbers would be a lot better. And a lot of that goes back into the management, because no pitcher is going to want to come off the mound. So that's what I'm really interested to see. How long does Dusty leave Verlander in, and how does he handle that? Realistically, it should be a short leash, because you've got so many other relievers that can piggyback and keep the momentum going. I mean, hell, they just picked up a no-hitter, right? They just passed the baton to them during a no-hitter and didn't give it up. Like, they can do that. So I'm very interested to see how Dusty manages Verlander in this one.
So the more we talked about it, because I went in liking the under, the more we talk about it, I kind of love the under now. Because to your point, Verlander could go 4 innings, maybe a shutout, then he goes in the 5th, puts a runner on, immediately gets taken out for Brian Abreu or Rafael Montero or Hector Neris or any of these flamethrowers. And I'm not confident that the Phillies can get to them. They haven't really this entire series. But then on the Phillies side, Noah Syndergaard, I think, can give you at least 4 innings of 2 runs, which is not even that good. But I think he can do that. And then you're handing it over to a bullpen that is still very well rested considering the postponement. So give me your final score prediction.
I'm going to say 3-1 Astros.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, that's so funny. I was like, I think I'm going 3-1 Astros when you were talking about it. No, I'll do a different one. I'm going to go 3-2 Astros.
Okay.
But it was 3-1.
I hope.
Yeah.
It was 3-1. You just changed one number.
To be close. Like, give me a great game, and I think that's what we will see. But there are just so many conflicting factors here.
I'll put my cards on the table. I'm rooting for the Phillies in this one, because I think if the Phillies lose this, like we said, like I don't like their chances to I could see them folding, in game 6, even with Wheeler. Like, I want to see the desperate Astros with 2 games at home. I feel good about the Astros' chances of sending that to a game 7. So I want to see the Phillies win this one, get those fans of Citizens Bank Park. Like, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, imagine if you paid like $2,000 for tickets to watch your team get no hit in the World Series. That's just like, if anybody that's listening happen to pay whatever amount of money to go there. I think it's $800, $861 just to get in the door of this game later today. Just, my thoughts are with you. I'm sorry. At least you witness history. I know that doesn't mean very much. But yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, give these Phillies fans something to cheer about. I know they got something earlier, but give them something to cheer about.
I'm also cheering for the Phillies to the same point you are. I want to see a game 7. It also would help my bank account because I have the Phillies series price. So we're still waiting on that.
Woo.
That'll do it for this episode of the Just Baseball Show. Maybe if you were in Citizens Bank Park, paid all that money to watch your team get no hit, maybe you enjoyed the Just Baseball Show. Hopefully you did. Maybe we gave you a little bit of sunshine. But that'll do it for this episode. We will be back tomorrow. Make sure to use code October15 in order to get 15% off Just Baseball merch. You will find that in the episode description. Our Manscaped code is still live. Use code JB Show. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Use code JB Show in the episode description for 20% off Manscaped. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aram's got 3-2 Astros. Or Aram's got 3-1 Astros. I have 3-2 Astros. But we're both rooting for the Phillies because we want to see a game 7. And with that, thank you, everybody.